Chapter 32:12. Lin Cece bit her lip. I've never seen anyone more shameless than you. Guze smiled and reached out to touch her hair. I'm only shameless to you. Lin Cece still stared at him, feeling disillusioned. Although she didn't want to be with him anymore, Guze wasn't like this in the past. Guze smiled. Let me show you something. She didn't say anything. He took off his coat and wore a beige sweater. The sweater was knitted and the workmanship was rough. It was something that Lin Cece was familiar with. It was the sweater that she had knitted for him when she was a little fool. He was wearing it now. Guze looked at the tears in her eyes and said softly, Don't cry. I know the confession was too sudden. I wanted to take it slow, but when Juan was like that, I couldn't do anything about it. He hugged her and said softly, I've never been with her. Not even once. I haven't touched her, huh? Lin Cece listened to what he said with a blank expression. After a while, she said in a low voice, That's not the point. Guze actually knew what she wanted to say. He smiled and said, Let's eat first. We could talk about it slowly. Cece, we have a lifetime. She still looked at him in a daze. Guze, did you say a lifetime? Guze nodded. Yes, a lifetime. Lin Cece wiped her tears and said softly, Guze, if you want to break up, then break up. If you say a lifetime, then a lifetime. Do you think that I have to be with you just because you said you love me in front of the reporters? Guze felt a stab of pain in his heart. He hugged her and coaxed her carefully. I know it's my fault. You can choose not to agree, but don't show up at my proposal or our wedding and stand me up to vent your anger, okay? Lin Cece looked at him for a long time before she came back to her senses. She squeezed out a sentence. Guze, you're crazy. Guze chuckled and replied, Perhaps. As he spoke, he reached out to prepare the lunchbox and took care of her while she ate, just like an ordinary married couple. Lin Cece was hungry, so she didn't refuse again. After eating, she said in a low voice, I won't agree. 1 month? I only want 1 month. Guze looked at her and sighed. You can be more straightforward and say that you only want the 80 million. She looked up and put on a fake smile. That's right. I only want 80 million yuan. Don't. Before she could finish speaking, her body was embraced by him. He buried his face in her neck and said in a low voice, Cece, don't say it. Even if it's what you think, don't say it. Lin Cece was held in his arms and could not move. After a long time, she whispered, Can you change this sweater? At least wash it before wearing it. It smells like dirt. Her face was filled with disdain. Guze laughed. You knitted it yourself, Lin Cece. How dare you despise it now? Lin Cece stuck out her tongue. That's because you're stupid to wear it. It's obvious that it's terrible. You become a lab rat, and you're still so happy wearing it. As she said that, he looked at her with an indulgent smile on his face. Chapter 32:13. He looked at her for a long time and said, Not good. When her expression changed slightly, he smiled again. Whatever you say. With that, he picked her up and put her in a new wheelchair. He pushed her out for a walk. Lin Cece let him be. The two of them were like an old couple under the setting sun. Guze treated her very well, unexpectedly well. He was so good that she almost believed that they really loved each other and that the hurt had never happened. Lin Cece asked him to stop. She looked at the clouds in the sky and smiled. Guze, don't you think those clouds are very strange? They look like this one and then like that one. Guze also smiled. They're what you think of in your heart. Lin Cece looked at it with him. After a while, she suddenly said, Guze, I want to go to Sea City. Sea City? Guze was a little surprised, because although there were their best memories there was also their deepest pain. Did she really want to go there? Lin Cece nodded. I want to go. Guze hugged her. Okay, let's go tonight. Lin Cece hugged his arm and said in a soft voice, Guze, can I be your little fool again? His body trembled, and then he smiled. That night was wonderful. Lin Cece arrived in Sea City at 8 o'clock in the evening. She took a helicopter, which was driven by Guze. When she arrived in Sea City, there was an even bigger surprise waiting for her. Annalie was there. If it weren't for her foot injury, Lin Cece would have already rushed over. The moment Guze carried her down, the fountain in the entire villa turned on, and the music fountain also began to sing happily. It was the sound that she hadn't heard for a long time. She had filmed a commercial with Emu by here, but now she was in a completely different mood. Perhaps she still had some regrets in her heart, but she could make up for those regretful dreams. She reached out her hand and felt the cold water in her palm, then smiled slightly. Guzé put her down. Let's take a walk and see if your foot still hurts. Lin Cece supported him and stood for a while. Then she raised her voice and said, Guzé, can you take a photo for me? He smiled, took the phone, and took a photo with her in front of the fountain. Her little face was a little unwilling, but his face was full of happiness. After taking the photo, Guzé didn't let go of her. Instead, he held her long black hair and said in a low voice, Cece, can we live here in the future? She smiled cutely, as if she had returned to the little fool of the past. She looked very cute, as if she had gone back to the little fool of the past. He reached out to straighten her hair and said in a low voice, moving the company's headquarters to Sea City is enough. Can your parents move here too? If you like, you can live together. Lin Cece was stunned for a moment and then looked at him. Is this a proposal? Forget it. He smiled. Then, do you agree? Lin Cece's gaze fell on his face. After a long time, she said in a low voice, Guzé, if nothing had happened to the Yi family, if Old Bai hadn't married by Xueli, I would have married him. Her simple words made his face change. Guzé wasn't stupid. He knew what she meant. Chapter 32:14. Guzé's voice was a little tense. Things between you and Old Bai are over. Lin Cece looked at him seriously. Guzé, in fact, things between us are over a long time ago. Why are you so persistent? Every word she said now was a rejection, and Guzé's heart ached. Did she not care about him anymore? Did she think that he was invulnerable, or did she think that their relationship was only worth 80 million? Guzé did not say anything. He pursed his lips tightly, and it was obvious that he was unhappy. Lin Cece smiled and walked towards the main house. Didn't we agree on a month? Shouldn't we be happier? She suddenly turned around and opened her arms to him. Her voice was sweet and soft. Guzé, hug me. He was stunned for a moment, and then he quickly walked towards her. At this moment, he was like a patient, and Cece was his medicine. Only by eating her would he be cured. He picked her up, and Lin Cece immediately put her arms around his neck. She said in a sweet voice, Guzé, I want to eat skewers. But he bent down and put his thin lips on her ear. I want to eat you. She screamed and curled up in his arms. She always knew what he liked. He liked nothing more than a little fool. In the night, he kissed her until her body turned soft. He looked around and saw that she really couldn't walk through the hall like this. Auntie Lee, who had been at the entrance just now, was now gone. She probably saw them kissing indiscriminately. Guzé thought for a moment, took off his coat and wrapped it around her, and walked quickly towards the main house. There was no one in the big hall, so he simply tore off her clothes while kissing her. They went back and forth, and when they reached the master bedroom upstairs, she was almost clean. Her body was thrown up, and she knelt by the bed. Her long black hair was scattered behind her shoulders, and she was very beautiful. Guzé lowered his head and held her chin to kiss her. At this moment, he thought of something and asked jealously, Has Old Bai kissed you? She hugged his neck and kissed him. I did. Guzé gasped and leaned forward to block her. Did he beat you? Lin Cece chose to answer honestly, yes, but not below. Guzé immediately let go of her and took 2 steps back. Lin Cece yawned lazily. Are you going to bring up the past with me? Guzé, tell me you haven't touched any of those little stars and models? He did. To spite her, and to forget her, he had slept with someone else. And it wasn't just one woman. Guzé's chest heaved violently. Are you interrogating me now? She moved closer again, her little hand gently stroking his chest. You said that I'm your wife this month, so you're mine? She was pure and sexy. She was much more interesting than when she was a little fool. Guzé went forward and kissed her again, almost fascinated. This time, there were no superfluous words, and the kiss had to be thorough. In the heat of passion, Lin Cece couldn't take it anymore. She scratched his back with her fingernails and said pitifully, Didn't you have a woman before? Why does it feel like you haven't had sex for a few years? Guzé pressed her down and coaxed her as he came. Chapter 32:15. They went back and forth a few times until late at night. Guzé thought that Lin Cece would be exhausted, but she insisted on eating skewers after the shower. Guzé kissed and caressed her. Can we go tomorrow? Your leg hurts again after so many times today. His little fool endured his kiss as she hugged him coquettishly. I just want to eat skewers. Do you really want to eat it? He whispered into her ear. His voice was intriguing. Lin Cece glared at him and said, Guzé, you're so naughty. I'll take you out to eat after you eat, okay? He coaxed her in a low voice. He didn't have such an idea at first, but at this moment, he wanted to do it. He wanted to bully her like this. Lin Cece's eyes widened. Guzé patted her head and said, Be good. Then, she obediently laid down on the bed. Half an hour later, Guzé walked out of the bathroom in a good mood, followed by Lin Cece. He put on her coat and smiled. Do you want me to hold you? Lin Cece looked at him and said, No need. She almost vomited blood. Her mouth was full of the taste of skewers. Guzé's skewers. Guzé was smiling all the way to the car. He pinched her soft face and said, You agreed just now. Why are you unhappy now? Lin Cece gritted her teeth and said, You didn't say it would take so long just now. That's because you eat slowly. He laughed and naughtily put the blame on her. Next time, you should finish eating faster. Lin Cece couldn't listen to it anymore. She covered her ears and didn't want to listen anymore. Before Guzé started the car, he couldn't help but kiss her face and said, Cece, you're so cute. Lin Cece shrugged and let him kiss her. She rolled her eyes at him. You only know how to bully me. She looked so cute that Guzé almost didn't want to drive. He just wanted to take the little guy back to the master bedroom upstairs and love him as much as he wanted. However, he still restrained himself and reached out to caress her little face. I'll try not to bully you outside of the bedroom. She glared at him again. Guzé felt that this was the best thing that could happen to him. It was as if he had such an imperfect but satisfying relationship in his life. He had no regrets. He started the car and went to the barbecue restaurant that Yi Mu Bai and her crew went to. He was a little proud and wanted to get back at them. That time he or she kissed White. So when he went over, he hugged her and kissed her fiercely a few times to regain his dignity. Lin Cece couldn't stand him anymore and complained, Guzé, you're so childish. I'm childish. He smiled and lowered his head to order his food. Then he said lightly, Fortunately, Yi Mu Bai and Bai Shuili are married. Otherwise, I would have to go through more trouble. Kidnapping the bride? Lin Cece held her cheeks and looked at him with a smile. Guzé looked up at her for a while, and his eyes were full of smiles. He said very slowly, It's unlikely that she would kidnap the bride. I guess she will have a secret affair with you. He asked in all seriousness, Are you willing? Chapter 32:16. Guzé's expression was a little complicated as he looked at her. Then, Are you in love with him? Lin Cece lay down and looked at him. She said slowly, Just a little more. Guzé knew that she liked Lao Bai. It was just that she didn't have the chance or time to get to that stage. However, he could also guess that Lao Bai hadn't touched her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so indifferent when she mentioned him. He didn't reply. Men were always petty in this aspect. He didn't want to keep mentioning Lao Bai and remind her of him. At that moment, the boss served the skewers. When he saw Lin Cece, he remembered that she was a girl from a few months ago. However, the man she was with last time wasn't this one. It was another very handsome man. Of course, this one was also very handsome. The boss took a second look. Guzé glared at him, and the boss immediately ran away. Guzé, you're so fierce. Lin Cece tugged at him. Don't be like that. Guzé was about to say something when Lin Cece stared at the rabbit heads on the plate. Oh my God, they're eating rabbits. That's too cruel. Lin Cece glared at Guzé. Guzé was a little helpless. You don't like it. I like it. Lin Cece grabbed one and ate it with relish. It's just that there's too little. You can order a few more. Guzé, after a pause, he came back to his senses. I thought you didn't eat it. It's very fragrant. Guzé, do you want one? Lin Cece snickered as she ate. She knew that he didn't eat these things. Guzé sighed. No, I don't eat it. She nodded and said regretfully, actually, it's really delicious. Guzé said helplessly, don't eat too much even if it's delicious. There will be your favorite skewers later. She nodded obediently and looked for tissues with her greasy hands. Guzé grabbed her hands and wiped them for her. Don't get them on your body. Lin Cece smiled at him. At this moment, Guzé felt as if they had returned to the past. Her mind was more mature than before, and the feeling was even more wonderful. It was as if he had just started to fall in love. It was his first time, and it was also Cece's first time. Guzé smiled faintly and reached out to open a bottle of beer for himself. Lin Cece nibbled on the rabbit head and asked, Aren't you going to drive later? You open it, he said matter-of-factly. Lin Cece snorted. She grabbed a bottle of beer and finished half of it. I can't open it now, either. Guzé glared at her and suddenly pulled her hair. Are you disobedient? Lin Cece leaned against his shoulder and chuckled. You're just disobedient. She seemed to be drunk as she hugged his arm. I'm not obedient. Do you still want me? At that moment, Guzé's heart tightened. He thought back to that night when she had run to the hospital to ask him if he still wanted her, and the night he had rejected her. His heart tightened, and he reached out to hold her in his arms, hugging her very tightly. Her little face was pressed against his chest, and she could feel his heart beating very fast. Guzé, Lin Cece called his name, feeling a little uneasy. Guzé's voice was suppressed. Don't talk, Cece. Let me hold you for a while. She pursed her lips and said softly, What's wrong with you? Chapter 32:17. She just buried herself in his arms and didn't say anything. They just snuggled up to each other and didn't say anything. After a long time, Guzé let go of her and smiled. Let's drink together. Then who's going to drive? She lay in his arms and asked in a soft voice. Guzé held her and said, I'll drive. As he spoke, he gave her a warm smile. Lin Cece immediately understood what he meant. She blushed and didn't say anything. The boss served a big pot of skewers, and Lin Cece sat next to Guzé like a happy bird. He hadn't seen her like this for a long time. He rubbed her hair and ordered a few more beers. Guzé drank a little too much and was a little drunk, so was Lin Cece. They were both in high spirits. Later, she sat on his lap and ate, just like a normal young couple. He wasn't the high and mighty CEO of Hungtong, and she wasn't the Lin Cece of the entertainment industry. She became his little fool again, being fed by him and talking happily in his arms. Her eyebrows were as exquisite as a painting, which was his favorite look. Of course, she was also liked by others. Because she was so beautiful, she attracted the attention of some bad men around her. Lin Cece whistled first. Guzé glanced at her and pulled her up. He threw a dozen 100 yuan bills on the table and said, Keep the change. There were about 5 or 6 men staring at Lin Cece's table. They were all quite young, in their 20s. Seeing that Guzé was about to leave, they immediately surrounded him and said, Brother, you look quite rich. You want to leave so early? Another man also chuckled and said, Brother, don't tell me you're leaving. You have to let us have a look at such a beautiful girl. Guzé asked indifferently, What do you want? Do you want money? He took out all the money in his wallet. There was about 10,000 yuan in cash. Take this. You can go find a hot girl. Lin Cece tugged at his hand. Guzé, you're insulting us women, just like them. Guzé patted her hand, signaling her not to make a sound. Lin Cece hugged his arm and hid behind him to watch the show. The leader came over, took the money, and smiled at Guzé. Brother, you're insulting us. Why don't you be more thorough? Look at what you're wearing and the car you're driving. It's worth at least a few million. How about this? We brothers won't be greedy. Just give each of us 880,000 yuan. Guzé lowered his head and looked at Lin Cece. Honey, do I have enough savings? No. Lin Cece pouted. Even if I sold you, I wouldn't get it. I borrowed the car and the house. Guzé looked over again. Did you hear that? My wife doesn't agree. The leader, the yellow-haired man, pinched the cigarette between his fingers. What a character, sister-in-law. You're willing to give up your chastity for money. The yellow-haired man turned his head, and someone immediately placed more than 20 bottles of beer on the table. Then he looked at Guzay and said, "Our rule here is that if you want to take away your girl, you have to fight one by one until you defeat us. Do you dare?" He gave Guzay a provocative look. Guzay looked at him and sneered. "You want me to fight all 6 of you? You can add your girl," the man said maliciously. Chapter 32:18. He picked up a bottle and said, "Didn't you want a drink? Come on." He gave Lin Cece a look. Lin Cece pulled him and said, "You can't beat 6 people. It's fine." He smiled. "Didn't you say you wanted to go to the bathroom? Here's the car key. Go and get me some sobriety medicine. I'm afraid I can't take it," Guzay said as he took off his jacket and handed it to Lin Cece. Lin Cece held his coat, took out the key from his pocket, and looked at him worriedly. "Go. Come back later and see how I drink them down." He smiled and patted her. Lin Cece stared into his eyes. There was warmth in Guzay's eyes, and she could understand what he meant. She nodded and said softly, "Drink slowly. I'll come back after I go to the bathroom." Guzay smiled and watched her run towards the parking lot. Then he turned to look at the leader. "How about it? Let's drink 3 bottles first." The leader was still looking at Lin Cece's back and suddenly smiled. "This girl looks like a star." "Maybe so." Guzay also smiled, raised his head, and drank the whole bottle. The yellow-haired man didn't want to be outdone and drank a bottle. Then the 2 of them finished 2 bottles together. Guzay was a little dizzy, but he still smiled and opened 10 more bottles, 5 bottles this time. The yellow-haired man smiled. "You're brave, but it's either your girl or you who serve us tonight. Have you thought it through? Do you want to get drunk?" Guzay glanced at these good-looking guys and smiled faintly. "Why don't I let my wife watch how I get on you one by one?" The yellow-haired man covered his face and laughed, and his brothers also laughed. In the end, the yellow-haired man looked at Guzay and said, "I can't tell. Do you think I'm going to lead? I'm so evil. Come on, let's do it. It's hard to say who will do it." Guzay knew that he couldn't stop drinking when he was talking to this group of people. If he stopped, their heads would turn around. Therefore, he smiled while holding the bottle in his mouth and downing one cigarette after another. In the end, their yellow-haired boss vomited after drinking the 3rd bottle. He was vomiting so much that he was almost foaming at the mouth. Guzay looked around and smiled. "Is there anyone else?" Seeing that he was completely fine, his subordinates became a little timid. At this moment, Blondie spat and roared, "Kill him! Screw this pretty boy!" One of Yellowhair's subordinates immediately stepped forward. "Let me compete with you." Guzay opened a few more bottles with his slender fingers. 5 bottles per person. "It's still the same. Do you want a drink?" The man looked at it and swallowed his saliva. Drink. However, it was probably too much. He couldn't take the 4th bottle. He covered his mouth and spat out. Guzay continued to pick 2 more and drank for more. When it came to the 5th, he also felt that he couldn't take it anymore. However, there were still 2 people on the other side. He supported himself with one hand and opened another 10 bottles with the other. He raised his eyebrows and said to the black-haired man opposite him, "Come." The black-haired man sneered. "I guess you won't be able to pass these 5 bottles." He had calculated. Guzay had drunk more than 10 bottles in total. These 5 bottles would definitely be drunk. As long as he could endure these 5 bottles, he would be able to kill one of them. Guzay looked at him, pick up the bottle. He narrowed his eyes and was about to drink, but the bottle in his hand was grabbed by a delicate hand. Chapter 32:19. I'll drink with him. Lin Cece snatched the beer bottle from his hand and raised her head to drink a whole bottle. That heroic spirit made Little Black Feather, who was standing opposite, tremble. Lin Cece put down the empty bottle and picked up another one. 3 bottles were enough to knock the black-haired boy down. The last one didn't dare to drink anymore. He was cut by the yellow-haired boss. "You're so disloyal. You're worse than a woman." But no matter how he cut it, it shrank and refused to come out. Lin Cece smiled. "Can we go now?" The yellow-haired boy waved his hand. "Go, go. Don't let me see you again." Lin Cece smiled and squatted down. She stared at the yellow-haired boy. "I haven't killed you yet." She looked at Guzay. "You?" Guzay rolled his eyes at her. "I don't have such a hobby." Even if I do you think I can eat you, Lin Cece? The yellow-haired boy heard this. Fuck, it really was that female star. Then this man was CEO Gu, who was worth hundreds of billions. The yellow-haired boy trembled and swallowed hard. He must have been blind not to know this great Buddha. If they really did it, CEO Gu, would they be killed by 1,000 people? Just thinking about it made the yellow-haired boy wet his pants. Lin Cece hugged Guze's arm and giggled. Guze, you're having so much fun. The yellow-haired boy softened again. Sure enough, her surname was Gu. Guze twisted her ear. I told you to go to the car first. Why did you come back? Lin Cece smiled foolishly. I came back to save the damsel in distress. You're a coward, not a hero. Guze shook his head and walked out first. Lin Cece followed behind him and hugged his wallet. She threw the few thousand yuan at the yellow-haired boy. You're so useless. Go and get your kidney treated. With that said, she hung on Guze's arm and walked out. Guze let her do as she pleased, looking very accommodating. The blonde softened and looked at his disappointing brothers again. He sighed. What the hell? I actually believed in love again. The gray-haired and black-haired ones nodded in agreement. Boss, us too. Blondie was covered in urine stains, but he didn't care at all, because he wasn't soaking in urine, but love. On the other side, Lin Cece hung on Guze's arm and asked softly, Guze, do you really not want to vomit? No. He snorted coldly. He was still angry at her for coming back. Lin Cece held back her laughter. But looking at your face, it looks like you're holding back. You want to go to the toilet. Shut up, he said harshly. Lin Cece secretly laughed. Guze, I suddenly realized that you are very manly. You actually didn't call the police. Men have their ways. He finally couldn't help turning his head to look at her. Lin Cece, I don't want you to think that I'm a man who only has a little money. But you have a lot of money, and I like your money. She secretly laughed and exposed him. Guze was angry. Lin Cece, will I be punished for telling the truth? Lin Cece blinked, looking pure and mischievous. Guze finally couldn't help it. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. He kissed and bit her. Lin Cece, I really want to kill you. Lin Cece's eyes were pure. Guze, you drank so much. Are you okay? He stared at her. Chapter 32:20. Lin Cece looked at him, bit her lip, and said innocently, Then I'll kill you. He stared at her and asked her softly, Really? Lin Cece hugged him, looking a little impatient, but more delicate. Guze, are you done? You're always looking for excuses. He grabbed her and dragged her to a small hotel nearby, threw down 200 yuan, took the key, and went to the room. In that narrow, shabby room, they were as vivid as they could be. All the things he had never used before, was unwilling to use, and was too ashamed to use, were all used. She was the same to him. No one cared about face, and no one cared about who they were. They just wanted to please each other's body until they were exhausted. After that, they hugged each other on the simple, sweaty bed. Lin Cece lay on his lower abdomen, moved her little fingers gently, and said happily, Guze, how nice it would be if we could always be like this. He smiled. If we can always be like this, I'll probably die. He reached out and pinched her face. How many times have you done it today? Have you counted? Lin Cece pinched him and complained. That's why I said you're old. Guze put one hand behind his head and looked at her. If you want more, you'll have to wait for an hour. Lin Cece giggled, climbed into his arms, and put her arms around his neck. I'll have to call you uncle in the future. Guze was still looking at her. Suddenly, he grabbed her arm and pressed her down. The next second, she whispered, Isn't it an hour later? Do you still want to call me uncle? He bit her ear. This time, he deliberately tortured her, making her feel like she was dying, and she no longer had the energy to provoke him. It wasn't until late that she was allowed to sleep. Early in the morning, Guze was woken up by Lin Cece. She was still lying in his arms, looking up at him like a baby, with a face full of curiosity. Guze smiled and kissed her little mouth. Why aren't you sleeping? What time is it? He reached for the bedside watch and said, It's only 8 o'clock. Cece, you're so energetic. Lin Cece was still staring at him. Guze, aren't you hungry? Guze smiled. He clearly knew what she was talking about, but he still deliberately touched the place where he touched her last night. Hungry again? Lynn Cece screamed. I'm talking about my stomach. Then feed me first. He rolled over and kissed her as much as he could, pressing her little body. He didn't really do anything to her. He just kissed her and enjoyed the beauty. Lynn Cece was tormented by him until she looked like a little lunatic. Her long black hair was a mess, and her little mouth was slightly red and swollen. She looked even younger. He smiled. She wasn't young anymore, but perhaps it was because she was too small and because she was heartless. She really looked younger than people of the same age. He kissed her again and again. Lynn Cece reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, smiling foolishly. I want to eat breakfast in a 5-star hotel, she said coquettishly. Gouze, there's so many bugs here. I've been bitten a lot. Really? Let me see. He chuckled, lifted the quilt, picked her up, and walked into the narrow bathroom. Fortunately, there's always a half-length mirror in the bathroom, and she was pressed against it. Chapter 32:21. Lynn Cece hid and lay on his shoulder. Not here. He smiled and went down again. Here. Every time he changed a place, she would scream. Even Gouze couldn't take it anymore. He laughed and said, Only these places? Are there any others? As he said that, he became a little emotional. Lynn Cece turned around and hugged him. No more. She lay on his shoulder and begged softly. I really can't take it anymore. Don't do it anymore, okay? Gouze smiled and let her go. He carried her back to the simple room and helped her put on her clothes. Lynn Cece lay comfortably in his arms and asked softly, Where are we going? Didn't you say that we're going to eat breakfast at a 5-star hotel? Let's go get a room. Gouze helped her put on her clothes and put her down. He stood up and put on his black jacket without hesitation. Lynn Cece's face was slightly red as she watched from the side. His figure was really good. She was very curious about how he could maintain such a good figure, even though he sat in the office every day. She reached out and secretly poked him twice. Gouze glanced at her, and she immediately ran away. Walking out of the simple hotel, the sun was shining brightly outside. Lynn Cece hung on his arm. President Gou, do you feel like you're overdoing it? Gouze looked at her. What do you think? She walked around him and always had something to say. Gouze eventually found her annoying, so he grabbed her in his arms and kissed her. Then, they didn't manage to eat breakfast at the 5-star hotel. He brought her back to the villa and fooled around for the whole morning before letting her sleep in the afternoon. In the weekend Sea City, they were very indulgent, as if there was no tomorrow. It was as if they didn't need to care about anything else. Other than eating and sleeping, they spent all their time making love. After a week, Gouze brought her back to B-City. Because Yi Mubai and Bai Shuli's official wedding was going to be held, Gouze had to attend. He brought Lynn Cece to live in his villa. At first, Lynn Cece was reluctant, especially when she was unwilling to lie on his bed. Gouze knew that she couldn't get over what had happened that day because he had forced himself on her on this bed. Then, that night, there was no child, no more. He came out of the bathroom and saw Lynn Cece lying on the sofa reading a magazine. She was wearing an oversized bathrobe. It was his. He walked over and bent over to hug her. Why aren't you sleeping? You've been crazy for the whole day? Are your feet tired? Lynn Cece sat up a little straighter in his arms and said in a low voice, I don't want to sleep yet. Gouze picked her up and placed her on the soft bed. He said in a low voice, Go to sleep. Her little body wanted to get up. He pressed her down, his expression gentle. Be good. Lynn Cece looked into his eyes and bit her lower lip, unable to say a word. Gouze buried his face in her neck and said in a low and hoarse voice, Cece, I'm sorry for that day. She stared into his eyes for a long time before she reached out and hugged his neck. She didn't say anything and just buried her face in his arms. After a while, he felt that his clothes were wet and hot. He hugged her tighter. Don't cry, okay? We'll still have children. You've already had a vasectomy, she said gloomily. Gouze smiled and kissed her hair. I lied to you. If I really had a vasectomy, why would I always wear one? So silly. Chapter 32:22. Lin Cece glared at him and stretched out her little hand to hit his shoulder. Guze, you're so bad. He laughed calmly and lay down with her in his arms. He held her in his arms and reached out to stroke her back, comforting her silently. Probably because of the topic of the vasectomy, Lin Cece was not as stiff as before. After staying in his arms for a while, she turned around and looked at him eagerly. Guze, are you really going to Yi Mubai's wedding? Guze lowered his head and pressed his forehead against her. He invited you too, didn't he? Cece, let's go together, okay? Lin Cece was a little hesitant. Want to be inappropriate? Why not? He smiled and patted her little head. Okay, go to sleep. She was still a little nervous, but Guze just hugged her and let her feel the warmth of his body. He did nothing else. Slowly, she relaxed and fell asleep in his arms. Early in the morning, when Lin Cece woke up, Guze was already dressed. He bent down and kissed her on the lips. I have to go to the company. I'll come back early in the afternoon to pick you up for the dinner party. Lin Cece nodded. Guze did not leave immediately. Instead, he paused for a moment and murmured, You can also take a look so that we can hold another wedding. Lin Cece wrapped herself in the quilt and refused without thinking. No, it will be very embarrassing. Guze pinched her little face. Do you think I'm old? I'm a few months younger than Old Bai. Lin Cece leaned against the headboard and stuck out her tongue. Old Bai hasn't used it before. I don't know how it is. Guze smiled and didn't say anything. He went to work. Lin Cece was a little bored. She got up and walked around the villa. The servants here all knew her and took good care of her breakfast and lunch. Lin Cece slept again after lunch. In the afternoon, a styling studio sent 2 dresses for her to choose. Lin Cece opened the box. One was blue, and the other was a classic black Chanel dress. Lin Cece actually wanted to wear the black one, but considering that it was impolite to wear black at a wedding, she changed into the blue one. That was a haute couture set from a high-end brand. It had a red stripe, revealing a little of the snow-white skin on the back. The long skirt was exquisitely embroidered, and the unit price was at least 1 million. This was specially custom-made by President Gu for Miss Lin. It fits her well. The staff said in an envious tone, Miss Lin, you can keep the Chanel set for the reception. Mr. Gu has also prepared a set of camellia jewelry for Miss Lin. Miss Lin, you can try it on. Lin Cece smiled faintly. Not today. It's quite troublesome to switch back and forth. That's true. The staff combed and styled her hair. Lin Cece's face was especially small, and she was slender. In the end, they decided to comb her hair into a bun. It was simple, but especially young and good-looking. Lin Cece even felt that it was very light when she held the hem of the dress. She looked in the mirror and saw Guze coming back with a box in his hand. Lin Cece turned her head. Is it for me? Guze signaled the staff to leave with his eyes. He walked over slowly and opened the box in front of her. There was a colorful necklace lying inside. There was no main diamond, but the design was very beautiful and matched the dress very well. Do you like it? He lowered his head and rubbed her little nose. Chapter 32:23. I'll help you put on. He hugged her from behind and gently bit her white and tender neck. I really don't want to take you out. She just trembled and said nothing. Guze helped her put it on, and then stood beside her and looked at them in the mirror. Lin Cece also noticed that he had changed a set of clothes, which was obviously for formal occasions. Actually, you're also very handsome today. Lin Cece gently hugged his neck. Guze couldn't help kissing her, handed her the handbag, and carried her downstairs. He hugged her like a princess and let her rest on his shoulder in the car. The car arrived at the GM Hotel an hour later. Tonight was the wedding banquet of the second son of the Yi family and the only daughter of the Bai family. It was held in the most luxurious hotel in B City, GM. Even Tang Yu and Pei Chi, who hadn't appeared for a long time, also appeared, but they only showed up for about 10 minutes, which was a great respect for the Yi family and the Bai family. When Guze arrived, he happened to meet Yi Muyun and Tang Sher. Yi Muyun had always been good-looking, and Tang Sher had the good genes of her parents. People would think that they were married if they just stood there casually. Guze went over to greet Yi Muyun. They used to be superior and subordinate. Later, when Guze ran away, Yimuyun still took care of him very much. At this time, he couldn't help but say a few more words when they met. Yimuyun saw Lin Cece for the first time, and his eyes became a little thoughtful. He looked at Guze and smiled faintly. Does she know what you're thinking about? Guze looked at Lin Cece, who was talking to Tang Sher, and said in a slightly low voice, she doesn't know yet. Yimuyun smiled again. She'll know soon. Guze, are you sure you want to tell her the truth so soon? A long night is fraught with trouble. Guze smiled. Maybe she can't guess it. Yimuyun looked at his wife and smiled. Do you think she's as stupid as my milkshake? Guze took a glass of red wine, pondered for a moment, and also smiled. Yimuyun also picked up a cup and clinked it with him. If I'm not mistaken, you might end up fighting tonight. Don't drink too much, or you won't hold back. Guze felt a pain in his heart, and his voice became soft. I won't hurt her. Once was enough, and the price was too high. At that moment, Lin Cece and Tang Shui came over. Tang Shui walked in front of Yimuyun and yawned. Big brother, I want to go home and sleep. Even now, she was still used to calling Yimuyun Big Brother. Clearly, Yimuyun enjoyed it very much. He hugged his wife and said, there will be a wonderful show in a while. Don't you want to watch it? Tang Sher hugged his arm. I want to sleep. After Yimuyun knew that she was pregnant, he was not interested in anything except sleeping. If it weren't for today's special occasion, she wouldn't have come. He smiled and took his leave, although it was quite a pity. Guze watched them leave, and then looked back at Lin Cece. What are you looking at? Lin Cece stuck out her tongue. Your former boss seems to be more handsome than you. Guze glanced at her. He is the son of Yi Liangxiu and Qin Anlin. His genes are a little better than mine. In fact, many people didn't know that Yimuyun was named after Tang Yuan business. He sold himself to the Tang family for the milkshake when he was 10 years old. It was quite crazy. Maybe the Qin family had many children, so he was willing. Chapter 32-24. As Guze was thinking, Qin Mu, whom he had liked for many years, and Zhou Chongwang appeared together, holding hands. He looked at Qin Mu and stared at him for a long while. Lin Cece also looked up at him. After a moment, Guze's eyes fell on Lin Cece's face, and he smiled. The atmosphere was a little strange at that moment. Guze, Qin Shu smiled and came over to greet him. Her eyes fell on Lin Cece's face, and she smiled very gently. Even Zhou Chongwang was smiling warmly at them. He was very tolerant of his wife's former admirers, probably because he was confident, because no matter what, Qin Mu's eyes were always on him. There had never been anyone else. Lin Cece looked at Zhou Chongwang, looked at Qin Mu, and then looked at Guze. Guze was looking at Qin Mu, and Lin Cece suddenly smiled. What's wrong? Guze held her hand and asked very gently. Lin Cece's voice was so low that only he could hear it. I'm laughing at you. At that moment, Guze's face was a little twisted, but he quickly returned to normal. At that moment, Lan Yu also came over with Qin Shun. Qin Shun accidentally recovered her memory in a car accident, and she began to wear men's clothes again. Her hair was also cut a lot shorter. Although she was not as manly as before, it was enough for Lan Yu to beat her every night. His wife changed from famous model to a full man. However, he was still very interested in her. Qin Shun was now working in the hospital, and she also performed surgeries, but she could not do those super awesome surgeries. When she was in New York, her hands were injured because of Rong Lei, and they were not as flexible as before. But when she returned to the hospital, she was still the idol of the young nurses, Dr. Qin. Many young nurses argued not to get married because of Dr. Qin. The addition of Qin Shun and Lan Yu made Lin Cece relax a lot. This group of people was also quite wonderful. There were many love triangles and quadruplets. Fortunately, Lan Yu's ex-wife, Tang Sher, was taken away by Yimuyun, or it would be even more chaotic. Everyone chatted together for a while, and the men tacitly took their women away. Nowadays, there are many people who are not strong-willed. Lin Cece walked into the hall with Guze. She looked up and saw his eyes fall on Qin Mu not far away. She smiled gently and looked down. Sure, there was still a gap between a whim and a true love. Qin Mu was the white moonlight in his heart that he couldn't obtain, and she, Lin Cece, was, how should she put it? She was just a passerby who accompanied him on his journey. From his gaze, she could tell that Qin Mu would forever be the white moonlight in his heart. Coincidentally, she didn't take it seriously this time. At this moment, Guze placed his hand on Lin Cece's shoulder. Yimu Bai and Bai Shuili also walked out slowly. The moment they appeared, Lin Cece's face paled. She finally realized that she had been tricked by Guze. She had originally wanted to retreat in one piece after a month, but was calculated by this man. Guze took advantage of her, and Yimu Bai's short passed, and Bai Shuili's power, and she, Lin Cece, was destined to have nowhere to run. She wasn't afraid, but she knew too well how it felt to be oppressed by power in this world. When her father was in power, she could be as arrogant as she could be. Killing a person was as easy as stepping on an ant. On the other hand, she could be stepped on by others. Chapter 32-25. It was the same high-rise dress, one on by Shuili and the other on Lin Cece. She was also Yimu Bai's ex-girlfriend in name. An ordinary woman couldn't stand this kind of provocation, let alone Bai Shuili, who was high and mighty. Lin Cece stared at Bai Shuili and asked in a very soft voice, "Guze, do you want me to have no way out?" After offending Bai Shuili, she could only be safe under the protection of Guze. He really had a good plan. Before Guze said anything, Lin Cece said again, "Will you do the same to Qin Mu?" Her hand was held, and he said in a low voice, "Cece, you know why I'm doing this, don't you?" "Yes." She took a step back, but her hand was still held by him. She couldn't break free. Lin Cece looked at Guze. "I'll leave you in a month and take 80 million. She said it cruelly and heartlessly. "Guze, you know I'm an actor. You wanted me to be your wife for a month, and I acted well to make you happy. This is my professionalism. There's nothing wrong with it." He stared at her and lost control in someone else's wedding. "Then what about my heart? Is it destined to be torn into pieces by you?" Lin Cece chuckled softly. "So when your heart is broken into pieces, you choose to let others tear me apart?" Guze reached out and held her in his arms. "I'll protect you." Lin Cece's face was very ugly. After a long time, she smiled gently. "Protect or possess? Guze, you haven't changed at all." She looked down. The one who loses power is destined to be trampled on and is destined to be hurt without notice, right? You treated me like this in the past, and you still want to do the same to me now. She broke free from him and didn't follow his script. In front of so many people, in front of Yimu Bai and Bai Shuili, she smiled at Yimu Bai. "Old Bai, are you still willing to marry me?" When Lin Cece said this, Guze was stunned. Yimu Bai was even more stunned. But when he saw the gown that Lin Cece was wearing, he knew in his heart. He became Guze's cannon fodder. There was a hint of heartache in Yimu Bai's eyes. If the girl he liked really told him, "Old Bai, I regret it. I don't want to let you off. I don't want to see you marry someone else," then he would choose to walk over to her. No matter how difficult it was, he would hold her hand and never let go. Yimu Bai recalled that night when he told Cece that he was going to marry Bai Shuili. At that time, he and Cece had already progressed to the point of kissing. Cece liked him, but not to the extent of love. If she had hugged him that night and told him not to marry Bai Shuili, he would not have married her. But at that time, Cece only smiled faintly. She said, "Old Bai, it doesn't matter. You can marry her." Cece had the same background as him. No one could understand his situation at that time better than she did. If he married Bai Shuili, the Yi family would be able to survive. If he didn't marry her, Yimu Bai, was nothing. He couldn't give Cece anything. What best actor? It was nothing in front of power. At that moment, he looked at Lin Cece. At that moment, their minds were connected. She wasn't making things difficult for him. She was giving him a way out and a chance to refuse. She had shouldered everything on her own shoulders. Chapter 32-26. He looked at Guze. Guze also looked at him. Slowly, he said, "Cece, stop fooling around. Go back with Guze." At this time, Bai Shuili walked to her. Lin Cece was slim and petite, while Bai Shuili was 170 centimeters tall. Bai Shuili leaned forward. Lin Cece, you still dare to fight with me for my man? Lin Cece smiled faintly. Your father used to be my father's adjutant. Bai Shuili, what you are doing now is my leftover. She pointed at Yimu Bai. So, is he? Bai Shuili smiled gently. Of course, she didn't like Lin Cece. The Lin family had fallen, and now the Yi family depended on the Bai family. She was going to slap the little princess in front of Mu Bai. Mu Bai didn't say it, but she actually knew that he had liked this little bitch for a long time. She had liked it since she was young. At that time, Lin Cece was a homo, always following behind Qin Chen's, but so Mu Bai did not make a move. Now, in the blink of an eye, Gu Zhe had played with her once, and he actually took it back as a treasure. Now she wanted Mu Bai to see clearly that it was different now. Who was the treasure and who was the trash? Bai Shuili directly raised her hand and gave Lin Cece a slap before anyone could react. Lin Cece's face was slapped to the side. She didn't care about Bai Shuili, but turned her face to the side and looked at Gu Zhe. There was a touch of mockery at the corner of her mouth. Gu Zhe stepped forward to hold her hand, but it was too late. Her body was hugged by Yimu Bai. A small one curled up in his arms. Bai Shuili stood and looked at Yimu Bai. Do you want to break up the marriage? Yimu Bai lowered his head and looked at Lin Cece in his arms. Do you mean what you said just now? Lin Cece looked at him. Yimu Bai gives a wry smile and reaches out to caress her face, which has 5 finger marks on it. What should I do? I feel distressed when you get hit. He looked up at the people around him, including his parents. He said firmly, I won't marry her. Let Yi Mulin marry her. Gasps could be heard all around. Damn, there's actually such a thing? Yimu Bai hugged Lin Cece and looked at Gu Zhe. I thought you would wait for her to recover, but you don't love her. You always put yourself first. So I want her back. In front of so many people, Yimu Bai kissed Lin Cece on the wedding day that originally belonged to him. Lin Cece was also stunned. She didn't want him to do this. Even if he got slapped, he would still be going against Gu Zhe. Her eyes were wide open, but in Yimu Bai's eyes, they were a little cute. He felt sorry for her and gentle at the same time. Lin Cece, you're not the only one who doesn't play by the rules. I could do it too. Lin Cece was dumbfounded. She really didn't want him to do this for her. What about the Yi family? Could he make a Yimu Bai appear? And could he turn back time? It was too much. Gu Zhe narrowed his eyes and immediately reached out to pull Lin Cece over. She's my woman. Yimu Bai directly hit him. Is this how you treat your woman? Bang! The punch was not light at all. The two men inexplicably fought like two beasts. All the people present were influential people. No one dared to take pictures because of their identities, and the wedding had to go on. Yimu Bai and Gu Zhe were driven to the lounge by 8 strong men. They let them fight, including Lin Cece. Chapter 32-27. At the wedding venue, Bai Shuili was still in shock and disbelief. She slapped Mu Bai and sent him away. Mu Bai said that he didn't want to marry her. He wanted to be with Lin Cece. What did Lin Cece have now? She had nothing except her face. Even Xiong was not as big as Bai Shuili. Bai Shuili was a very stubborn girl. She got whatever she wanted since she was young. Yimu Bai was someone she wanted but couldn't get. She was going to eat me tonight, but Lin Cece lured him away with just a few words. Bai Shuili's hand was held before she could cry. She was stunned. She wanted to call Mu Bai, but when she looked up, it was the eldest son of the Yi family. Yi Mulin. Her eyes opened wide. She didn't want to marry this man with a poker face. It was said that he couldn't do it, so he didn't have a wife. She wanted to break free, but her eyes met her father's. His eyes told her that it wasn't the time for her to be stubborn. She had to clean up the mess she made. Bai Shuili's eyes were filled with something hot. She wanted to cry. Yi Mulin's tone was cold and low. Don't think that I'm willing. Cooperate. She gritted her teeth and said with a trembling voice, Is this a fake marriage? Yi Mulin didn't answer her. A family like theirs wouldn't allow a fake marriage. Mu Bai was stubborn for once. He couldn't let Bai Shuili go again. Yi Mulin knew that in the eyes of the Bai family, Bai Shuili's value was much higher than Mu Bai's. He didn't want to marry, but he had to sacrifice it now. He was a good lawyer, but he didn't know how to coax girls. He didn't have the patience to do so. Especially, he didn't like Bai Shiwili at all. She was shallow, exaggerated, and probably had surgery on her face. She was a far cry from the traditional, intellectual woman in his mind. Among so many women from prestigious families, he only found Qin Mu pleasing to the eye. The others like Qin Shun, He Huan, Tang Shui, and Lin Cixi were all repulsive. The eldest son of the Yi family, Yi Mulin, was someone who looked down on women. His temper wasn't better than Yi Mubai's. He was a workaholic. Moreover, the wedding ceremony was simple and crude, and he took Bai Shiwili away. Everything happened so fast that it was inconceivable. This man was a man of action. Since he was married to her, he had to negotiate the terms and conditions with her, then go to bed with her and give birth to the heir of the Yi clan. That night, Bai Shiwili experienced what it meant to be the peak of life and to walk to the lowest valley. He narrowed his eyes. Yi Mulin was simply a devil. She was thrown on the bed. Her new husband sat on the sofa at the end of the bed with a stern face and loosened his tie. Bai Shiwili wanted to cry. Wow! Her meticulously prepared wedding night, sensual pajamas, 1982 red wine, and roses were all gone. She was going to spend a night with this man? He couldn't do it yet. Don't cry. Yi Mulin's voice was deep, but was unexpectedly sexy and pleasant to the ears. He rubbed his eyebrows and looked at her. Shall we sign the contract or sign the agreement first? You motherfucker, Bai Shiwili scolded. Yi Mulin, you bastard. You're older than me by more than 10 years. Are you trying to rob the cradle? She quickly climbed out of the bed and ran to the door. But he quickly grabbed her hair, dragged her back, and threw her on the bed. Yi Mulin loosened his tie and smiled faintly. Let's do it first and then talk. Marriage may wake you up a little. Chapter 32-28. Yi Mulin pulled off his tie and dragged Bai Shiwili over. She screamed, What do you want to do? Yi Mulin, are you crazy? I like Yi Mubai, not you, a boring workaholic who only knows how to work all day long. Yi Mulin took off the haute couture dress directly. The new Mrs. Yi screamed again. Yi Mulin, what do you want to do? We are married, Miss Bai. I am exercising my rights as a husband. He began to kiss her neck. The new Mrs. Yi was shocked. This workaholic could even kiss. He didn't do it rudely. But the next second, tears burst out from the corner of her eyes. He squinted, and he did it directly. Yi Mulin, you bastard. You're shameless. You bastard. Pain. Bai Shiwili opened her eyes wide, looking at her temporary husband. He squinted. When he did this kind of thing, he still looked like an elite. There was no expression at all. Bai Shiwili beat his shoulder angrily, biting her lips with tears coming out. But these couldn't stop Yi Mulin. He didn't stop at all. He didn't show mercy to her. He didn't show mercy because it was her first time. After a while, he whispered in her ear, Don't seduce Mubai casually. You are his sister-in-law. Do you know that? Bai Shiwili stared at this hateful man. I will seduce him. Tomorrow, I will drag him to bed. What she got in return was his rudeness. She screamed, Are you a pile driver? It was really painful. He was like a machine without flesh and blood. Mrs. Yi, thank you for your compliment. Yi Mulin was still expressionless. Then he announced the second rule. Don't make trouble in the Yi family, understand? Bai Shiwili bit her lips. I promise I will steal a man every day. Then I will publish the photos of you and those men. Do you want to? He pinched her face and turned it into a more powerful pile driver. Damn, it hurt. Bai Shiwili grabbed his back and tore his shirt. She fought with him like a crazy woman, but that man spent their wedding night violently with her, gnawing on her until not even her bones were left. From the beginning to the end, there was no pause. It took 3 hours and 8 minutes. When everything calmed down, it was already early in the morning. Yi Mulin stood up and straightened his clothes. He didn't even change his posture. Looking at Bai Shiwili, who was lying there like a dried dead fish, he smiled faintly. You didn't lose out. It was my first time too. Bai Shiwili hadn't removed her makeup yet. When she heard his words, she immediately became energetic again. First time I asked. It's not a good habit to swear. You have to remember that you're Mrs. E now. Yi Mulin frowned and took out his phone from his pocket. He called his secretary and said, "Come here. I have an agreement to sign." Bai Shuali got up from the bed and jumped behind Yi Mulin. She gritted her teeth and said, "I'm not your wife. We will divorce tomorrow." Yi Mulin frowned. "You weren't satisfied just now, so you want a divorce?" He took her down and placed her on his lap. To be honest, Bai Shuali was beautiful, but it was a superficial kind of beauty. Everything about her was European style. Even Xion was a fake. Chapter 32:29. "Pa." She slapped his face. Yi Mulin grabbed her hand and said thoughtfully, "I wasn't used to it just now, but now I know." Damn, he was really a genius. He could infer many things from one instance. He didn't change for 3 hours, just now. Was he playing with fried dough twist now? But Bai Shuali had to admit that he was really fucking awesome. Even her screams were filled with excitement. When Yi Mulin's secretary came over, she was also speechless. Her boss suddenly got married, and she didn't even prepare a wedding gift. Yi Mulin's shirt was stained with blood. She didn't know if it was his or Mrs. Ye's. Anyway, his strict appearance was a bit embarrassing, and the new Mrs. Yi was even worse. She only wore a bathrobe, and her face was pale. The makeup on her face was messy, and her neck was full of kiss marks. It seemed that her boss had special feelings for that piece of land. When the little secretary was trembling, Bai Shuali shouted, "I want a divorce." Yi Mulin didn't care. "You have been in our period these days. We have done it 4 times. You might be pregnant with my child now. How can you get a divorce? Besides, the Yi family and the Bai family can't afford to lose face like this." "I don't care. I want Mubai back." Bai Shuali was not afraid of anything. To some extent, she was the same as Lin Cece in the past. She could get anything she wanted. Yi Mulin looked at her as if he was looking at a willful child. "We have slept together. Do you think Mubai will still want you?" Bai Shuali stared at him. Suddenly, there was a touch of moisture in her eyes. The moisture slowly gathered, tears fell down one by one. She didn't make a scene anymore. She just looked at him, the man who had just taken her violently. Really, this man was too strong. All her resistance and willfulness were not worth mentioning in front of him. He wouldn't be soft-hearted to her. When she was in pain, he only cared about his own enjoyment. She sneered in her heart. Don't think that she didn't know that he was actually enjoying it. This man pretended to be dignified, even if he was enjoying it. Bai Shuali stared at him and said softly, "Yi Mulin, you bullied me." He was so much older than her. He was big and strong and forced her. She hated him to death. She hated him to death. To hell with the marital agreement. This devil wanted to control her. There was no love between them. Everything he did was for the Yi family, for Yi Mubai. He took her in the same way he did his cock. Yi Mulin stared at her and frowned. "Stop fooling around. I have to go to America tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Didn't you say I was going to marry you? Is there no honeymoon?" Bai Shuali picked up a table lamp and threw it at him. "You're a bastard. What do you think I am? I don't want to marry you. The moment you leave, I'll drug your baby brother and climb into his bed." Yi Mulin crossed his arms in front of him and stared at her. "Are you angry because you didn't have a honeymoon?" "I'm angry about marrying an old man like you." Bai Shuali was furious. "I won't sign your so-called marital agreement. As long as you don't divorce me, I'll spend all your money and make you wear a green hat." Chapter 32:30. His secretary looked at his boss with a look of surprise, as if the door to a new world had been opened. Such a shameless man. Was he her boss? Was it the serious boss who never cracked a joke? Didn't the boss not like women? But why does it look like he's making love in a machine? Yi Mulin looked at his secretary. "Go out first. Get the driver to pick me up at 6. The secretary gulped and left. She wondered if her boss was going to keep their wedding night until dawn. She had to admit that she knew the truth. After the secretary left, Yi Mulin looked at his new wife. "Are you going to America with me, or staying in B City? Is there a difference?" Bai Shuali was on guard. "There isn't much of a difference," Yi Mulin said calmly. Bai Shuali stepped back. "Then I choose to stay in B City." He looked at her. "Okay." Then he carried her to the bedroom and threw her on the bed. She screamed. What do you want to do? Wasn't this his first time? Was an old man on his first time so scary? This time, Yimulin took off his clothes one by one and threw them away. As he got fewer and fewer pieces of clothing, his figure could be seen clearly. It was the body of a supermodel. It was so pleasing to the eye that it made people's noses bleed. But that didn't stop her from hating him. Since you chose to stay in B City, I have to promise that you will behave yourself when I'm not around, Yimulin said expressionlessly. Then, he said 10,000 words shyly. Bai Shiwili was stunned. He got what he wanted. She widened her eyes and hit him with all her might. Bastard, it's my first time. Was he addicted to raping her? She was really in pain. She cried uncontrollably and slowly lost the strength to struggle. She just laid her face on the pillow and cried silently. She looked a little fragile. Yimulin kissed her face. Good girl. He pushed even harder and did it until 5 in the morning. Bai Shiwili had reason to think that if he continued, he would rape a corpse. She would be the corpse. Yimulin was too cruel. He was not human at all. He didn't treat her as a woman at all. He treated her as a machine like him. When he left her body, she used her last bit of strength and said weakly, I must divorce you. Yimulin was getting dressed and frowned when he heard what she said. Why do you still want a divorce? Am I not able to satisfy you? Fuck him. Did he think that marriage only needed to feel good and that there was no love or liking? Bai Shiwili was so tortured by him that she didn't want to talk anymore. She turned around and ignored him. She flipped over, and he could clearly see the finger marks and kiss marks on her back. Yimulin put on his clothes, walked over, and sat down. He gently touched her back with his fingers. Does it hurt? That shouldn't be the case. He had known Bai Shiwili for a long time. She was thick-skinned and very good at fighting. How could she be so weak after one night with him? He couldn't understand. Bai Shiwili suddenly turned around, her eyes red. Get lost. He had taken her the first time, the second time, the third time, so many times, and he had the nerve to ask. He did not seem to be made of flesh there. It was iron. She stared at him, her eyes red, and finally buried her face in the pillow. Chapter 32-31. Fuck. He still had the cheek to complain. Why didn't he complain when he was on top of her the whole night? He complained when he got off the bed and pulled up his pants. Bai Shiwili threw a pillow at him. She was already planning to find a gigolo to make him a cuckold the moment he left. She hated him. She hated him a lot. She hated him to death. If it wasn't for him, she would have been with Mu by last night. She would have worn those sexy pajamas, and Mu Bai would have been tempted. She would have lived with Mu Bai like a princess and a prince. She wouldn't have been with this egomaniac. He wasn't her ideal person at all. He was arrogant, his entire body was hard, and he was especially rough and not gentle. He didn't have any expression when he did it. She was not happy at all. Other than pain, there was more pain. Also, he had so many flaws that she couldn't even count them. The more Bai Shiwili thought about it, the sadder she felt. She felt that she had raped Yimulin in her past life. That was why he was treating her like this. Her first time was gone just like that. She started to cry. It wasn't a soft cry, but a loud one. She didn't like him anyway and didn't need to act like a lady. It would be best if he hated her now and divorced her immediately. Thus, she cried even harder. Her tears and snot were all over the place. Actually, Yimulin should have left, but his new wife was lying on the ground, crying like she was at a crime scene. How could he leave? Bai Shiwili cried, while paying attention to the movements around her. She realized that he actually didn't leave. She wailed, Go away, I want to find a gigolo. His face was green as he leaned over to look at her messy face. Look at you now. No matter how much money you give, the gigolo might not be willing. I'm willing. You don't have to care about me. She buried her face in the pillow and sobbed. She felt that she couldn't live anymore. The sky was falling. Yimulin looked at her helplessly and impatiently. In his life, women were troublesome. The one in front of him was simply a lowly creature. In his eyes, everything about her was fake. But she was tested. She was real. And the halo behind her was someone else's. It was fake. A fake that couldn't be any more fake. She was a useless worm. Other than providing a path and a purple palace to conceive a child, she had no use at all. Moreover, This woman kept saying that she wanted to make him a cuckold. Yulin had a headache. He rubbed his forehead and looked at the woman on the bed. He was the one who bullied her so badly. Initially, he thought that with his good performance, a slutty woman like her would be happy to cater to him. However, after an entire night, other than screaming, she didn't even say a word of praise. He lowered his head and looked at himself. Or was he not good in that aspect? Yulin pondered for a moment. In order to prevent himself from being cuckolded in a few days, he made a decision. Bring her to America, but he had to convince her. Lawyer Ye's way of persuading people was also very unique. He picked her up and went to the bathroom to wash her ghost-like face with water. Bai Shuili gulped down a large mouthful of cold water and shouted desperately, "You need to use makeup remover, Yulin, you bastard." Yulin frowned. Won't the facial cleanser work? He was definitely a straight man. Bai Shuili wanted to fuck his ancestors. She wiped her face and said, "No need for that. It won't wash off. You go out, and I'll wash it myself." He seemed to doubt her words and even warned, "If you dare to run away, I'll catch you. You'll kill me, right?" She slammed the bathroom door shut. She wanted to fuck him to death right now. Chapter 32. Yulin rubbed his nose and coughed softly. Maybe, yes. Bai Shuili roared angrily. Go to hell. Yulin raised his hand to look at the time. He could still give her half an hour at most. During this time, he made himself a cup of coffee and sipped it as he looked around the suite. To be honest, he hadn't taken a good look since he came in. It was ordered by Bai Shuili for his and Mubai's wedding. He seemed to have thought of something and walked to the changing room to open it. Sure enough, there were a few interesting outfits hanging inside. A set of sexy white spaghetti straps and a set of black. Yulin took down the black straps and was sure that it was a set of lingerie. Tie play. He curled his lips. What a hardcore taste. At this moment, a fair hand snatched the things from his hands. How can you go through my things? He raised his eyebrows and looked at his new wife. She had washed up simply, and there were no weird things on her face. She looked much more pleasing to the eye. Her facial features were still European, but her skin was very fair. One look, and he could tell that she had been pampered for a long time. What are you looking at? I've never seen it before. Bai Shuili threw the two clothes into the trash can. Yulin crossed his arms in front of him. If you didn't buy it, why did you throw it away? How could he not know that she had prepared it for Mubai? If it was another man, she wouldn't be interested in wearing it. Actually, Yulin didn't look forward to it. He was a very practical man. To him, women were just taking off their clothes to give him a visual impact. As for those fancy clothes, he didn't appreciate them, nor was he passionate about them. But he didn't expect that one day he would really like his wife to wear these clothes to seduce him. He would become a hardcore person. However, he didn't really appreciate it now. He was just making things difficult for her. Bai Shuili smiled coldly. It's a waste for an old man like you to wear it. With that, she took off her bathrobe and got ready to change. She didn't have any intention of avoiding him since they had slept together. Yulin leaned against the door and looked at her naked body. She looked fair and translucent under the faint morning light. She had the slender figure of the east and the plump figure of the west. She was very pleasing to the eye. The eldest brother of the Yi family had never had a woman, but there were many women who threw themselves into his arms. Some of them were even celebrity models, but none of them could compare to the body in front of him. He had held it with his own hands and even slept with it. His gaze was still absent-minded, because he had vented many times, so even though he found it pleasing to the eye, he did not have the impatience of an inexperienced youth. Bai Shuili cursed in her heart. She changed her clothes and walked towards the door. Yulin goodbye. No, it would be best if they never met again. My lawyer will send you the divorce papers. As soon as she opened the door, a large bouquet of red roses appeared in front of her. The face of a young man who was delivering the flowers appeared behind her. Are you Miss Bai? These are your roses. Bai Shuili took the roses and threw them on the ground. I don't need them anymore. What a fucking rose. Just as she finished throwing a tantrum, a strong hand grabbed her wrist, and then a deep voice rang in her ears. Apologize to him. Chapter 32-33. Divorce is divorce and respect is respect. They are two different things. Yi Mulin's voice was much stricter. Bai Shuili looked at him blankly, and her eyes became misty. Hey, don't think that I'm afraid of you. You slept with me for nothing. You should be thankful that I didn't sue you. Let me tell you, if you pester me again, I'll sue you for rape. Husband and wife had sex, and you want to sue me? Are you sure? He sneered as if he was looking at a child who didn't know anything. Bai Shuili's mouth was moving up and down violently. She glared at him. Yi Mulin, don't think that I don't know about marital rape just because you're the best lawyer. Where's the evidence? He pulled her closer with one hand and trapped her in his embrace. Did I hurt you or something? Aren't you feeling quite comfortable? He paused. On the contrary, there is evidence of your rape behind my back. Why don't I sue you for rape? Let's see who has a better chance of winning him. Bai Shuili used her bag to hit him. Yi Mulin, are you even a man? You didn't even fucking greet me before you barged in. It hurts so much, and you still have the cheek to say that I raped you? You're just shameless, pretending to be a hypocrite all day long. The man who delivered the flowers was stunned. It was so exciting this early in the morning. Her handbag had left 2 deep scratches on his face, and it wasn't shallow at all. Yi Mulin snatched her bag and threw it into the trash can. Bai Shuili screamed. Yi Mulin, you bastard! Don't you know that this is a limited edition from Hermes? You can't buy it, even if you have money. She rushed over, but her pride didn't allow her to pick up the things in the trash, even if it was clean. She turned around again, and her eyes were burning with anger. She clenched her fists. I hate you. Apologize. He pulled her over and held her in his arms. He made her face the man. I'll say it one last time. Apologize. The man was stunned and waved his hand. No need, no need. I just need an autograph to prove that I received it. Yi Mulin sneered. She ordered the flowers for herself. She doesn't need to sign. Also apologize. I don't want that. Bai Shuili was stubborn. Why should I apologize to someone who sent me flowers? Let him eat shit. My surname is Bai, and my father is. But you don't have your dad. You're just a piece of shit. Yi Mulin mocked. Bai Shuili almost went crazy. She screamed. Yi Mulin, what are you saying? You're a piece of shit. Didn't you say that he ate shit? If you don't apologize, I'll let him kiss you. Do you want it? He twisted her arm, forcefully and roughly. Bai Shuili screamed again. Yi Mulin, I want to divorce you. Yi Mulin grabbed her and said to the delivery boy, come and eat shit. The young man who delivered the flowers was completely dumbfounded. This man is so strong. At this moment, not only did he not feel humiliated, but he also felt extremely satisfied. Just as he was hesitating, Bai Shuili screamed, don't come over. I apologize. Say sorry, you're wrong. Yi Mulin looked at her. Bai Shuili's eyes were full of tears. She stared at the delivery boy. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Say that you shouldn't let him eat shit. Yi Mulin's voice was still cold. Bai Shuili suppressed her anger. I shouldn't let you eat shit. Chapter 32-34. After she said that, Yi Mulin nodded with satisfaction and said gently to the man who sent the flowers, okay, you can go now. The young man who sent the flowers thanked him and ran away. Yi Mulin turned around and looked at his new wife. She looked like she was about to explode. He let go of her and said, don't think about the divorce. I can't afford to lose my face. There's one more thing I want to tell you. Dress conservatively in the future. Don't show anything that shouldn't be exposed, understand? As he said that, he looked in the direction of the trash can and said, as for those immoral clothes, you can wear them at home, but if you wear them outside, then you will divorce me, right? Bai Shuili was exactly what he wanted. Yi Mulin sneered at her naivety and said, I will break your legs. His distinguished new wife was furious. Yi, do you know who I am? I will definitely know who you are when you marry me. Yi Mulin's voice was cold. If you marry me, I will fix all your shortcomings for you, so that you won't pollute the earth. Fuck, Bai Shuili scolded. Men like you who don't know how to be sweet and only like to rape are the real garbage of the earth. As soon as she finished speaking, she screamed, Yi Mulin, what do you want to do? Yi Mulin had already picked her up and walked outside. As he walked, he said in a deep voice, "To the United States. I don't want to go to the United States with you. I don't want to go with an old man like you." She punched him desperately and bit him with her mouth, but it was useless. He still carried her into the elevator. When they reached the first floor, he stuffed her into the car and got on the private plane. The marriage farce between the Yi and Bai families was temporarily calmed down because of Yi Mulin's strength. Yi Mulin was very busy, so there was no honeymoon and no homecoming party. Bai Shiweli's passport was all in his hands. When she went to the United States, she could only wait for him in the hotel. She had to reproduce day and night. She didn't even have a chance to seduce a man. As for the people involved in the fight in the hotel the day before, they were all sent to the hospital. The VIP ward of Xinyuan Hospital was specially designed to welcome these rich men. The most powerful and beastly doctor in Xinyuan Hospital, Qin Shun, was also waiting for them. Yi Mubai was fine. He had no grudge against Qin Shun, so his treatment was normal. However, Guze was different. He was no different from Lan Yu at that time. While enjoying Dr. Qin's wonderful medical skills, he also had to be criticized. Guze and Yi Mubai were both injured in different degrees. One of Guze had a broken rib, while Bai's leg was broken. Qin Shun brought two beautiful nurses to change Guze's dressing. His technique was very good. It was neither too light nor too heavy, just enough to make Guze die. How could Guze not know that this was Qin Shen's revenge? He gritted his teeth and asked, "Where's Cece?" Qin Shen chuckled. "She's your ex-wife. At Yi Mubai's place, you almost broke her leg. Of course, Cece has to accompany you. Or should she accompany you?" Qin Shen chuckled. "She is your ex-wife. You almost broke her leg at Yi Mubai's place. Of course, Cece has to accompany you. Or should she accompany you?" "She's my wife this month, right?" Qin Shen smiled. "Guze, actually, if you hadn't schemed against Cece yesterday, you could have parted on good terms. But you shouldn't have schemed against her. If you love someone, do you have to scheme against them?" He just wanted Lin Cece to offend Bai Shiweli. Then, she could only survive under his protection. But loving someone was not like that. If you love someone, you should let that person fly higher. Even if you had to look up to her, you should be happy. Guze's love was too overbearing. Chapter 32-35. There was still sweat on his forehead from the pain, but he didn't feel anything from the pain. He only felt a little lonely. He was lonely without Lin Cece by his side. He said hoarsely, "Can she see me?" Qin Shen got up and stood there for a while. He seemed to be thinking about it and said, "I'll ask, but it's up to her whether she wants to see me or not." Then she said something that made Guze's heart tighten. Yi Mubai ran away from the wedding for Cece, and Yi Mulin took over everything. From what I know, Yi Mulin and Bai Shiweli must have really gotten married. Do you think Cece will be touched by Lao Bai? Guze looked at Qin Shun and asked slowly, "If it were you, would you choose Lao Bai or me?" "I choose Lan Yu." Qin Shun said coldly, "Neither of you is my cup of tea." Guze looked at him in disdain. "You just like to be gay with him." This couple really had a bad taste. Qin Shun paused and said, "If I were Cece, I would choose Lao Bai." Guze's heart was cold. He lay on the hospital bed alone, wondering if Lin Cece was really with Lao Bai and if she was lying on the same bed with him. Just thinking about it made his broken rib hurt even more. At night, his heart was even colder. He didn't know where she was now, but he guessed that she was with Lao Bai. He felt a little proud, but he couldn't stand it anymore and took the phone. He held it in his hand for a long time before he finally dialed her number. It rang 4 or 5 times before he picked it up. It was her soft voice, "Guze." When Guze heard her voice, his throat felt as if it was blocked. He thought of what Qin Shan had said. He said that if he didn't scheme, they would part ways. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted her to live with him forever. He held his breath, feeling nervous like he had never felt before. "I don't have anyone to take care of me. I want to drink water. Can you come over?" Lin Cece was silent for a moment, but she still agreed. "Wait a moment." Thus, Guze was overjoyed, like a miserable young man waiting for the girl in his heart. He fidgeted and lay down, unable to find a most elegant posture. Lin Cece arrived 5 minutes later. She was wearing a wool skirt and a wool shawl. She pushed the door open and quietly poured a glass of water. She placed it in front of Guzé's bed. Didn't you want to drink water? Guzé leaned against the wall and looked at her with a burning gaze. Where's Lao Bai? Yes. Lin Cece smiled faintly. He's better at acting coquettishly than you. Guzé's mind was in a mess. He couldn't imagine Lao Bai acting like a spoiled child. Did he lean on her shoulder and ask her to feed him? He thought about it and hesitated whether he should do the same. Lin Cece said again, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. There's no nurse there. I have to take care of him. Just as she was about to leave, Guzé reached out and grabbed her wrist. He said in a low voice, don't go. He grabbed her arm. Lin Cece wanted to step back, but he held her firmly. She had no choice but to say, Guzé, don't do this. He looked at her and asked softly, have you made your choice? Do you choose to be with Lao Bai? She shook her head blankly. Then, she looked at his gaze and suddenly nodded. Yes, I will be with him. She lied to him. If it made it easy for him to let go. Guzé gently closed his eyes. I don't believe you. It's true. Her voice was low. Guzé, I'm sorry. We really can't go back. She struggled to break free from his hand, bit by bit, as if she was trying to break free from his life. Chapter 32-36. Guzé loosened his grip, as if he was about to let go of her, but he quickly tightened it again. Not only did he tighten his grip, but he also pulled her into his arms. When she pressed against his ribs, Guzé cursed, but he didn't let go of her. Instead, he held her tightly. Their eyes met, and he stared into her eyes. Tell me you're lying to me. Lin Cece's face was forced to be buried in his neck, and her voice was a bit moist. Guzé, your injury will worsen. If you don't love me, why do you care about my injury? He said almost willfully. Then, he pinched her chin and kissed her forcefully. Lin Cece wanted to retreat, but he pressed her head with another hand. This way, her body pressed against him even harder, and Lin Cece could almost hear his broken rib breaking inch by inch. Her eyes widened, and she struggled desperately, but every bit of her struggle made him hurt more. Guzé didn't care at all, kissing her almost crazily. He even ignored his rib injury and pressed her down, eager to possess her and prove that she was still his. The consequences were serious. Before he could succeed, his head accidentally hit the nurse's bell, and several nurses came together. The scene was chaotic. Lin Cece's clothes were disheveled, and Guzé's rib was broken again. When Qin Shun rushed over from home, she wanted to saw off Guzé's rib. He was already injured like this, but he was still thinking about XXO. How big of a heart did he have? It took Qin Shun 2 hours to set Guzé's rib. When she came out of the surgery, she saw Lin Cece standing at the door of the operating room. She took off her mask and walked over, smiling. Are you okay? Lin Cece looked at Qin Shun and suddenly hugged her. They hadn't hugged like this in a long time, and it had been a long time since they were alone like this. Qin Shun was stunned for a moment. Then she lowered her head and held Lin Cece in her arms. Her small one was in her arms. Just like in the past, just like in New York, they were leaning on each other. Lin Cece rested her face on Qin Shun's shoulder and said softly, Sister Qin Shun, you remember, don't you? Qin Shun didn't answer her directly. Instead, he hugged her tightly. Cece, that's all in the past. She turned back and cupped her little face. Everything will be fine. Lin Cece looked at Qin Shun and smiled with tears in her eyes. She nodded her head vigorously. She looked at the person whom she used to really, really like, hug her once again. She murmured, What should I do, Sister Qin Shun? I still like you a lot. Qin Shun laughed. It's very simple. I'll talk to Lanyu later and take you back as well. I'll take turns to pamper you too. Lin Cece rolled her eyes. Forget it. I'll be killed by Lanyu. At this time, Lanyu was impatient from waiting in the parking lot. He came to find Qin Shun and happened to hear it. He walked over with a smile and pinched Qin Shun's face. What? I can't satisfy you. You still want Cece to warm your bed? He knew best about Cece's past when she liked Qin Shun. Qin Shun rolled her eyes at him. Do you really think of that great? Lan Yu pulled her into his arms and looked at Lin Cece. Do you want to go back with us? Lin Cece couldn't help but laugh. I don't want to warm your bed. Lan Yu coughed lightly. You can warm my bed too. Chapter 32-37. In the parking lot, Lan Yu asked his wife worriedly, Are you really not going to care about Cece and Guze? How? Chen rolled his eyes at him and fastened his seatbelt. You should be able to tell who Cece likes. It's impossible for her and Lao Bai to be together. I think Cece should be relieved that Bai Shuali is forcing her to marry him. Do you think she will be with Lao Bai again? Lan Yu touched his chin and smiled. You're right. Chen sighed. But Guze is too scheming. He wants too much. Cece will be very tired if she is with him, and she may not be willing. Lan Yu didn't say anything else and started the car to go home. In the hospital, Lin Cece stood in the corridor. After a while, Guze was pushed out. The anesthesia was not completely over yet, but he was already a little conscious. Guze's parents were also there. When they saw Lin Cece, the atmosphere was a little strange. Lin Cece whispered, Andy, you're here. I'll leave first. Mama Gu stopped her and looked a little hesitant. I have a few words to say to you. Lin Cece pursed her lips and forced a smile. Okay. Mama Gu looked at Papa Gu. Papa Gu nodded. I'll take care of Guze here. Guze's eyes opened a slit, as if he was about to wake up, but at the same time, he didn't seem to be awake. Lin Cece looked at him for 2 seconds and went out with Guze's mother. After going out, Mama Gu didn't speak immediately. Instead, she sighed. Cece, we didn't know that you and Guze were married before. When we found out, you were already divorced. Guze has let you down. We know that Guze really likes you now and wants to be with you again. But please understand our hearts as parents. We just want our children to live a good life. She wiped away her tears. Old Gu and I used to have a daughter, but she was too stubborn and couldn't get over it. She jumped off a building and died. Now, we only have Guze as our son. We've always hoped that he would marry Wenwan, but he lied and said that he had a vasectomy for you. Actually, Wenwan had no choice but to say that she was pregnant. We believed that she was a good girl and wouldn't mess around. Mama Gu looked at Lin Cece and said slowly, Cece, do you understand what I mean? When Lin Cece heard this, how could she not understand? She smiled faintly. I understand that my past does not meet your standards for a daughter-in-law. But don't worry, there is no possibility between me and Guze. I will leave. Mama Gu was a little relieved. I'm relieved that you said that, but I still feel a little sorry for you. After all, you have sacrificed a lot for Guze, especially that child. Lin Cece felt as if a thorn had been stabbed in her heart. She smiled gently. The child is not Guze's. Mama Gu felt uncomfortable and a little disappointed when she said that. She murmured, It's not our Guze's. Yes, it's not his. Lin Cece lowered her eyes. All right, that's it. I'm leaving. She pointed across the room. My boyfriend still has that part. I'm going to take care of him. Mama Gu was even more disappointed. You have a boyfriend again? Yes, his name is Yimu Bai. Guze knows him, and so do you, Annie. Lin Cece spoke very quickly, as if she was avoiding something. Then, she opened the door of the ward opposite and dashed in. Chapter 32-38. Lin Cece leaned on Yimu Bai's shoulder and said softly, No, I don't want to cry. Lao Bai didn't say anything and just hugged her. After a long time, she vaguely heard him say, Cece, you still have me. Lin Cece was in a daze for a long time before she raised her eyes. There were tears in her eyes in the dark. Lao Bai, do you have to be so melodramatic? He kept looking at her. Then he smiled gently and said softly, I'm just kidding. Then he reached out and turned on the light. The light in the ward suddenly became soft, and the tear stains on her face could be clearly seen. Yimu Bai sighed, Cece, you are not such a fragile person. In fact, the only explanation was that she cared about that person, so she couldn't stand his mother's words. At that time, he wanted to rush out, pull her over, and say domineeringly, This is my woman. Then he would kiss her. However, he didn't. He didn't dare. He was afraid that Cece would want to turn back. He was afraid that he would block the way for her to turn back. If that happened, he would never forgive himself. He was indulgent to her, he liked her, and he would rather see her happy. Even if she chose to be with someone else, it didn't matter. Lao Bai felt that he enjoyed the poignant beauty very much. He probably acted too much and was too immersed in the role. However, it was the first time that he cherished a girl so recklessly, so he didn't want to force her, and he didn't want to use anything to kidnap her. He looked at Lin Cece, and Lin Cece also looked at him. After a long time, she finally smiled very softly. Lao Bai, it's really good to have you here. He patted her head. I'm very good, but you still refuse me? Lin Cece helped him to lie down on the bed and sat on the edge of the bed with her chin in her hand. I saved you from the fire and water. Guze thought for a while, and then he suddenly smiled softly. You didn't expect it to develop like this, did you? Lin Cece lay on one of his injured legs, and her little chin rested there. Lao Bai's face was distorted with pain. He took back his words. She was not a little angel. She was a little devil. Lin Cece smiled and moved her chin away. She sighed softly. You didn't expect your brother to accept Bai Shiueli, right? As she spoke, she raised her eyebrows. I heard that you and Bai Shiueli used to like each other. How is it? How far did it go? Yi Mubai rolled her eyes and kicked her with her uninjured leg. Stop pulling nonsense. However, he couldn't help but sigh in a gloating tone. She's my sister-in-law now. Rather than saying that he had been in love with Bai Shiueli, it was more like a nightmare. He really couldn't stand her temper, but he didn't know if his brother could. Lin Cece smiled. She lay next to Yi Mubai, and there was a touch of nostalgia in her eyes. Actually, I quite miss the past. At least I don't have any worries. Yi Mubai reached out and pulled her hair. You're worried about Guze now, aren't you? She did not deny it and remained silent. Cece, go back to city, eh? If it's difficult, then find a man to marry. There was a touch of sadness in his voice. Don't choose me. I don't want you to be lonely. Lin Cece was a little surprised. She looked at him and then laughed. Lao Bai, you're acting again. Don't be like this. I want to be with you when you're like this. Chapter 32-39. Lin Cece was still smiling. It was really relaxing when she was with Lao Bai. All her worries seemed to vanish into thin air when she was with him. However, they were still more of good friends and lovers. That night, she slept next to Lao Bai, fully clothed. Lao Bai told her many jokes, and she fell asleep while laughing. Yi Mubai reached out to turn off the lights, his gaze quietly landing on Lin Cece's face. Her little face was calm, but even though she was asleep, she still looked unhappy. He knew that it was because of Guze, a man who could make her heart beat faster, who could make her love and hate him at the same time. And he, Yi Mubai, was not that man. In her life, he was just like Lanyu. And Guze had appeared at the right time. He reached out and gently brushed away the stray hair on her face. He smiled lightly and carefully leaned over to kiss her forehead. Good night, Cece. Lin Cece slept until noon the next day. She received a call from Guze. Lin Cece, where are you? She was sitting in Yi Mubai's ward, but Lao Bai was nowhere to be found. Lowering her eyes, she said softly, Guze, what I said yesterday was true. I'm with Lao Bai. As she said that, she took off her sweater, leaving only a white camisole on her body. She half crawled under the blanket. The door opened. Guze was standing at the door with bandages all over his face. He held onto his phone and looked at her, looking at her lying on Lao Bai's bed in only her underwear. Her long hair was scattered over her shoulders and her eyes were a little red. Guze's eyes suddenly turned bloodshot. He was still holding onto his phone as he asked her, Are you sure? Lin Cece's phone slid down from her hand. She looked straight at him and said softly, I can't be more sure. Guze's body swayed. He held onto the door frame with one hand and smiled faintly. That smile was cold and self-deprecating. After a long time, he said, I'll transfer 80 million to your account. Lin Cece did not say anything. Guze stared at her and suddenly asked in a ruthless tone, Lin Cece, are these days really nothing to you? Or are you blaming me for scheming against you? It has nothing to do with schemes. She looked at him and smiled. The past is the past. Guze, I said to be your wife for a month. When the time is up, everything will go back to square one. Guze looked at her as if she was a stranger. He still remembered that when they were in Sea City, she called him Guze. She said that she was very happy. Every time they made love, she would always call his name. Guze, 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 she said, Guze, how long have you been holding back for you to keep coming like this? But as she complained, she hugged him even tighter. That kind of burning emotion, was it all an act? She had never forgiven him. Guze took a step back. The gauze around his mouth was already stained with blood, but he did not care. He still stared at her. He stared at her body lying on Lao Bai's bed. Did you guys do it last night? He asked her softly. At this moment, Guze's mother appeared behind him and held him up. She called out worriedly, Guze. Lin Cece looked at him and her lips moved. Then she smiled. Yes, we did it. I said that I wanted to be with Lao Bai. Chapter 3240. But she could only look at Guze. There was nothing she could do. She couldn't do anything. There were too many things between them. The things he had done to her, her weakness, and his parents' disapproval. Lin Cece wasn't naive enough to think that they could be happy as long as she asked. So, she would rather give up. And she didn't plan to be with him for a long time. She didn't want to experience the feeling of loving someone so humbly anymore. Guze, who was at the door, took a few steps back. Mama Gu held him up and looked at Lin Cece with disgust. You don't like Guze and don't want to be with him. You don't have to make him angry. He was hurt by your man. With that, Guze's mother said with some dissatisfaction, this kind of woman can make a man abandon his wife at a wedding. What kind of good can she be? Guze, don't be so stubborn. Guze's eyes were still fixed on Lin Cece. He said to his mother softly, Mom, stop talking. Mama Gu wanted to say something, but she was worried about her son. So she said, Okay, I'll stop talking. Go back and ask Dr. Chin to come and take a look. How much turtle soup will he need to make up for this blood? Guze glanced at Lin Cece again. She leaned against the bed and looked at him. In the end, he looked away and returned to his ward. At this moment, Yi Mubai appeared out of nowhere and looked at Lin Cece quietly. Just say it if you can't bear to. I think Guze still wants you to return to his side. I don't know how much turtle soup will be needed to make up for that blood. Lin Cece smiled and said softly, You only know how to make me happy. General Bai sighed and said, I heard everything. But Cece, put on your clothes. If you had been willing to lie in my arms last night, we would have become a real husband and wife. We wouldn't have needed to lie. Lin Cece rolled her eyes at him, put on her sweater, and sat on the bed. General Bai sighed again and sat down. Those who don't know will think you are a patient. Let me lie down. After lying down, he complained again, Guze hit me so hard. Look at my leg. I won't be able to walk for at least a month. I might not even be able to have sex. Lin Cece looked at him and coughed lightly. Have you ever done it before? White shrugged. Cece, don't tell the truth. She laughed so hard that she almost choked. After a while, she leaned on his arm and said softly, Old Bai, you must find a very pure girl, really. Otherwise, you will be letting down this pure body of yours. Yi Mubai squinted at her. Are you mocking me? Is it that obvious? Lin Cece's smile became more obvious. I'm serious. He looked at her and suddenly pulled her into his arms, hugging her a little tightly. Lin Cece let him hug her. After a long time, she said in a low voice, Old Bai, if there's a next life, I will find you first. She didn't say anything else, so he didn't pursue the matter. He understood what she was thinking. It wasn't that she didn't work hard, wasn't firm, and wasn't persistent. It was that she couldn't let go of the past, whether it was the unbearable things or the time with Guze. In other words, the only person who could make Lin Cece let go of the past was Guze. No one else could. General Bai hugged her like an elder brother. Chapter 3241. No need. Yi Mubai smiled. I know my brother's character best. He will definitely sleep that night. This is a lawyer's habit. Everything will be completely legalized. Lin Cece thought of Yi Mulin's poker face and felt that Bai Shuili was so miserable. She felt that the slap she gave her seemed to be a little light. She hugged her knees and leaned side by side with Lao Bai, talking. After a long time, Yi Mubai asked her in a low voice, "Aren't you worried about Guze?" Lin Cece paused for a moment and then said in a low voice, "Sister Chunshan will tell me if there is anything." Yi Mubai didn't say anything more and just rubbed her hair. He didn't ask Lin Cece if she still loved Guze. He thought that she loved him, but she had too many scruples in her heart, and Guze still couldn't trust her. They were like parallel lines that would never meet. She stayed in Yi Mubai's ward for several days until Sunday afternoon, when Guze suddenly appeared. Unlike before, he was dressed neatly this time, with a black coat over a gray sweater. He didn't look like he had 2 broken ribs. Lin Cece was sitting in front of Yi Mubai's bed, holding an English book in her hand and reading it to Lao Bai. After Guze opened the door, his eyes dimmed for a moment. "Do you have time?" Lin Cece put down the book and turned to look at him. Guze smiled faintly. "I want to talk to you alone. Is it convenient?" He noticed that she was wearing home clothes. Although she didn't reveal anything, there was a kind of indescribable intimacy when she was alone with Yi Mulin. Therefore, he unconsciously took a step back. Lin Cece looked at Lao Bai. "I'll go out for a while." Yi Mubai held her hand. "Follow your heart." Lin Cece pursed her lips, withdrew her hand, walked out, and closed the door. "There's a small meeting room. Let's talk there." Guze nodded and walked over first. Lin Cece followed behind. Inside, Guze closed the door and silently took out a check from his pocket and placed it in her palm. Lin Cece shuddered and looked up. "Guze, actually there's no need for that." He smiled bitterly. "You'll be my wife for a month. Isn't it just 80 million? The house payment will be transferred to the account." Lin Cece held the check in her hand. She didn't reject it pretentiously. Instead, she thanked him softly. As soon as she finished speaking, Guze hugged her. Her hands were clenched in midair. She wanted to struggle, but she gave up and let him hug her. Guze buried his face in her neck and said in a low voice, "Lin Cece, you don't plan to be with Lao Bai, do you?" She did not make a sound. He continued, "If you were with him, you wouldn't need this 80 million. Lao Bai's net worth is billions. You wouldn't take my money." Lin Cece's hands fell down. After a long time, she whispered, "Guze, this doesn't mean anything." He hugged her tighter and asked her again, "You really don't want to turn back?" "Lin Cece, haven't you felt anything for me in the past month? Don't you feel like returning to the past at all?" He let go of her a little and said softly, "As long as you want, I can give you anything. As long as you turn back, I can give you anything." Lin Cece looked up and stared into his eyes. "But if I have to give up my freedom and self-esteem, I'd rather not have anything. Guze, if you feel that you've lost out, I can stay with you for a few more days." That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.